I'm not a criminal.
I had to take a mugshot.
Got fingerprinted.
To get my record clean. We were on the topic of like gun shooting and things like that because we had a lockdown like earlier, and so I said like if anybody truly wanted to like even do anything bad to the school, they could just come to the boiler room, and then we'd all be like screwed. And then from there, I guess that's what kind of sprouted everything. I randomly got called down to the office like first thing in the morning, and then after that we were just sitting there talking, and then after like 10 minutes of talking, they finally actually said, you know, why I was there, and it was really like, weird because I had no clue, and it's just weird being accused of something randomly.
Yesterday, they said that I was suspended for being late to class, but they never gave me a paper, and they basically just like labeled me as like a suspension already. And then I went to school yesterday because I didn't know. I didn't get a paper. And basically they literally kicked me out of the school. And I was like, no, I'm not doing this. So I called one of my friends and they let me back in the school. And I had to basically wait in the hallway for about another hour and a half until the buses came. And then when we were walking out to leave the building, they're like, oh, you're not getting on our school bus. Like, you're trespassing.
Like they will suspend me. I'll come back, do the same thing. Suspend me. Come back and do it. Like just a repeat.
We're just like criminals and like thieves and everything because we live in a bad neighborhood.
I found that so many of our students felt that they were so labeled by their interaction with school discipline, whether it started off with just detentions and then it led to suspensions and expulsions. I think that the immediate effects were just like, okay, I'm punished, I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing. And they kept getting punished until either they were actually arrested or sent to a different school, where they were sent usually to alternative schools. They kind of like adapted that label, and they just became the kid who acted out. I think it just like precipitated a pattern of, once I was labeled this by teachers, by like the disciplinarians, they just accepted that as who they were.
Like they'll try to give you a detention for it or something, or like try to suspend you when you just need a minute out of class. Like, it's just little things that my school, like my Apple school district, I feel as though blows out of proportion. Or like if you get into an argument with somebody or you just need a break or something, some teachers calm you down, but some of them don't. Like they'll just like make it seem like whatever you're doing, you're in the wrong for it, and that you need to be disciplined immediately. But some people, that's not how some people think. Like some people just actually might like black out or like freak out, and they need somebody to calm them down and talk to them.
It was like unfair for real, because they didn't let me tell my part of the story. They just like kept cutting me off, and they're like, no, they're like, you did wrong and you're out of this school basically. And they didn't really care. Like when we had like time to talk about it, they would just give their opinions and the facts and just would like single me out of it. And then when we called, because we didn't know what to do about it, they just wouldn't do anything to help us.
They automatically accused him and took him out of school. And, you know, he's supposed to be in school. He had to go to an alternative school. Like, this is some scary stuff. And I don't know if they really understand what they're doing to a child when they go through this, but it really plays with their mind. And to me, that's hurting children. He was straight A's through the year, and the last 2 months he was booted out. He didn't get to complete, you know, his school year there or the exams. It could have affected the rest of his life with school.
Because I'm like, I'm not a bad kid. I don't belong in alternative. Y'all think I'm a bad kid, but I'm not like that. Y'all don't know the real me helping people out. Y'all only know the label as I am, as a criminal and a disappointment and all that, and a failure. Y'all don't know I be helping people out here, helping them like through like hard times with their family. Basically, out of school suspension is terrible because like the alternative schools, they treat you like a member of a jail, like a prisoner. Like they have to pat you down, they have to go through metal detectors, there's cameras everywhere and everything. There's cops in there walking you down the hallway if you need to go to the bathroom. It's everything. It's wrong.
The code of conduct is based on all of this Christina School District, and Byron is a unique school. It's unique because of the students that we deal with, the population, the families, the income, and I think that at times it's hard to follow the code of conduct. Sometimes they get suspended for things that are in the code of conduct, maybe like an in-school suspension, but because of resources, there's not always in-school detention as an option. Now, most times, yes, but it's not always. So sometimes the lack of resources make it hard to follow the code of conduct, in my opinion.
So when there's no other resource for you besides a police officer, like that's what you're gonna use.
At first, I wasn't nervous. I didn't think it was that serious. I just thought I was just going down there. And then, then the cop from my school came out. And then, I still thought everything was fine. But then when I went to the back, and then he told me stand on the wall, and I'm like, for what? And he was like, he had to take my mugshot. That's when I was just I thought it was out of proportion at that point. Because, I'm only 16. So I'm like, why am I taking a mugshot and getting fingerprinted as if I'm a criminal? Because I'm not. The way that, the officer from my school wrote up the report, he made me, the antagonizer. And he made it seem as though they couldn't control me or calm me down, and I was a hassle to get myself together, and that I was trying to attack not just her but teachers and administration. And I think once she read the report, she already had it made up in her head that I was a bad person and I don't know how to conduct myself or whatever. And I feel after that, once I talked to her on camera, she wasn't letting the lady who was defending me, the public defender, or letting me or my mom speak. She was just talking to him or so and just letting me know what I did wrong.
4.5 hours. It's boring. It was just a metal bed, and that was it. I left to get my mugshot and fingerprinted. And they took me back in, and they took my phone and everything and put it in a locker. And then when they took me out the cell, they put me in the back of a van, and then they took me to the courthouse, and I had to go to court. And they had me handcuffed, and I was with a cop, and I wasn't with a parent at all.
They immediately made him leave school. He was fingerprinted, arrested. They didn't ask him his side or his questions. They just assumed.
I remember looking at a lot of cases and all the stories, and it's sad. It's shocking, it's sad, it's a wake-up call. A lot of these kids, they did do the wrong, but it wasn't intentionally wrong.
Behavior ultimately that most kids grow out of. Putting a criminal stamp on typical or normal behavior leads to other consequences in the criminal justice system, such as having a legal record and having to make that appearance in court and handle the charges from a criminal perspective, when it ultimately is behavior that most kids do grow out of.
In family court, I think we're a little bit different because we realize that they're going to make bad decisions, but not every bad decision needs to be criminal or criminalized. So I think one of the most important roles is to be able to not only explain that to the kid if need be, but also to the public as well, where we're trying to make sure that this person, this kid, is going to be serviced in a way where when they turn 18 and become an adult, they're in the best possible situation to succeed.
A lot of the kids that I worked with directly through residential treatment facilities, they came to me either through the courts or from their home environments. And a lot of times they came with traumas, and a lot of them felt misunderstood. They felt like they didn't have a safe space to communicate their concerns and their perspectives.
A lot of times just not being able to communicate creates a level of frustration in itself that can be very easily misinterpreted and taken the wrong way, which can bring about some hostile feelings.
I think that, first of all, a lot of the kids that come here are already experiencing trauma in many parts of their life, unfortunately, and sometimes that's why we see them here, because they're acting out based on that trauma in school or in other facilities. I suppose it could be very traumatic for a child to come through the criminal process. I don't hear much about that in the courtroom, the actual process being traumatic on them, but we know that we do everything we can to keep kids out of the system when necessary, because it's just better for them not to be more and more embedded in the system. So we do have all kinds of diversion programs that we offer, and we're constantly working with our stakeholders on other alternatives so that we're not bringing kids in this process when we don't need to, and when there's a viable way to handle the case alternatively.
What can we ask the court to order be put in place that's going to set this kid up for success and not set them up to fail? I think we have to take a lot of other things into consideration as well. You know, specifically with schools, you know, think of all the inputs that they have, right? They've got their friends, they've got their parents, they've got teachers, they've got administrators, they've got coaches, they've got bus drivers, and their sphere is pretty big compared to an adult's. Compound that with their doctors, whether they're in therapy, whether they're in counseling, for whatever reasons. So I think, you know, as a prosecutor, I think it's to recognize that it's certainly not black and white in terms of an approach to whether we're prosecuting a case or not prosecuting a case, or how we're going to prosecute it. We've got to recognize that it's not just the kid and his or her decision, but there's a lot of other factors that could have come into this as well.
You know, me as a parent, this was not just harmful to my grandson who attended school, but it was harmful to me too. And even though that happened like 7 months ago, probably, we're still going through it. Even though, you know, we took steps to make it over, we're still affected.
I don't feel as though they should be charging people who are like 15, 16 years old, because at the end of the day, that's on your record. Like, when you have to go to like interviews when you get older, you're always going to have to explain yourself. Or like, people might look at you different based on something you did when they don't know that maybe you just made a mistake.
It's not just your criminal record, you have to worry about your school record, because I know, like, my record got expunged, but then there's a school record, and you know, like, kids want to go to college, go to other schools, and schools look at that.
SB 85 is just the beginning, very, very beginnings of a long process of bills that need to be implemented as far as education is in the state.
I think we have 40 years worth of statistics that shows that punitive discipline is ineffective at changing school culture. The more punitive measures you have, the less safe your school is for the students.
Pushing kids out, expelling them, suspending them, arresting them is not helping anyone, and not necessarily being done on purpose, but we're pushing certain students out. The people that were being arrested were predominantly students of color, predominantly girls, and the schools that it was happening at were our low-income schools. And then other schools, the only children that were being arrested were children of color. And it was like, okay, how, that doesn't make sense, because if everybody's getting in trouble, but the white students are being sent to the counselor, and then the black students are being handcuffed on the ground, why is that happening, and who is condoning it, and who is letting it happen?
But I also think paying more attention to race and culture and power and bias, these things that might make people feel uncomfortable, but the data persistently show that there are disparities in terms of race, there are disparities in terms of income status, disparities in terms of ability, and then increasing exclusionary discipline for females, black females in particular. So addressing implicit biases and culture and race, as we're talking about climate, is really, really important. But you first have to name it, be comfortable with that discomfort.
If somebody read that report, like, about what happened with me in the fight, I wouldn't want anybody to think like I'm crazy or like this type of person who doesn't know how to control themselves. I just feel like I can be better at controlling myself when it comes to things like that, or like just blacking out. But the type of person that my school seen that day, that's not the type of person I am. I just feel like I know how to conduct myself. I know how to be a young lady. I am 16. I know how to carry myself with respect. And like the person that like they made me out to be, that's not the type of person I am.
I think you have to like assess where the problem originated from, and I don't think a lot of our disciplinary like programs have done that. So we're just punishing rather than like we're not assessing where did this start? Why did this kid act out this way? Why are these two kids fighting?
When we were on our previous unit, I let them teach the class, so each child was responsible for teaching a unit, and they got to see what it feels like to be the teacher and to experience their own behaviors. And I do believe after that their behaviors kind of decreased drastically.
It was super challenging, you know, as a police officer, as a cop being in a school. But I mean, I will say William Penn's admin was amazing to work with. They completely got it. And what I mean by got it, like, they understood that I wasn't the cure-all for all the problems. You know what I mean? Like, I would get brought into a situation where either I had a rapport with the kid or, you know, things were just really out of control where, you know what I mean, it was a law matter. For the most part, I was the last resort. My involvement was just based on the severity of the incident. I remember what it was like to be a kid. My main purpose for being here, it's not because you guys are bad. I'm here to make sure that you guys can come in here, hang out with your friends, you know, get your learning done, play sports, get involved, and you know, if someone comes in here and tries to hurt you, you know, I want to be here to protect you.
I think that our educational system and everyone involved needs to understand more about trauma. So I think if we were able to bring trauma trainings into our schools, it would really set the tone for teachers and disciplinarians to really understand the kids. So I would kind of just ask these professionals to think past how these kids are acting out and to try to understand and empathize with them.
They need a person who thinks of it as if they're in another person's shoes, not based off their opinion. Like somebody who is mindful of other people. Like somebody who's like understanding and can see like both sides of a story more than just one. Like yeah.
I think the more time you spend up front getting to know the individual, getting to know their needs, and being able to open up a dialogue where they can speak, and giving them that space where they're comfortable, you can receive effective communication.
I would say don't try to figure out like why they were acting bad. Just listen to them, because they could have done that with me, but they didn't. They would always try to find out why. And I would just say listen, just listen, because I will tell you why. I always told them why, but they just always do something before actually listening. So my major thing is just listen. If you listen, you'll eventually get it. So just listen.
If the child is constantly getting suspended, like there's something else going on. It could be something at home. It could be something in their neighborhood, you know. So to just communicate a little more, get more counselors in the school. I think that's what's really needed.
Just to have somebody in your corner, or like trying to like help you realize, okay, you made a mistake, but we can move on from this, or we can get your like charges dropped, or we can work on it with you. I think that's good. Like, okay, I'm not by myself, and like if I actually do this, this, and this, I can fix this. Like, this is not the type of person I am. I just made a mistake, and I can make a change from it. Like, I can reflect on my actions.
I know my students have a lot of potential, and I think programs like this should be definitely incorporated in more schools. By working here, I learned the need of, you know, a school social worker. And in this district, all the schools don't have school social workers, or all they have is school counselors. And school counselors are really, really busy.
They can have a lot of the cases or anything just kind of looked into a bit further. That way there's not like random little things said that's just blown right out of proportion. Try not to force a discipline action until you are either sure or have looked into it enough to think that you're making the right choice.
So my understanding is it's an approach and it's a set of practices that focuses more on relationship building and kind of restoring a community rather than punishment that's used in traditional discipline practices. Also holding all community members, both the offender and the ones who've been affected, accountable to what has happened.
Once that student, understands accountability, that's going to follow them through, the rest of their years in school.
This is something that the whole building just started on this year. When we have RP sessions, a lot of times when you're talking about discipline, the focus is on the behavior. What did the child do? What didn't the child do? Blah, 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 blah. When you're talking about RP, you separate the who from the do. So we all know what the child did, but the action doesn't necessarily define the character of that child.
What restorative practice means to me is that it means that the voice that you do have will be heard. It gives me, the educator, an opportunity to learn. It gives the student an opportunity to learn, and it gives us all an opportunity to come together where now we have, since we've had that conversation, it has boosted the morale of the school, in my opinion.
It's a process. It's not something that you have RP, you go to a training session, and overnight your school is Disneyland. It's
Amen.
more or less that it's gradual, and you start to see the results in time. So every time a kid has a meeting, they learn those conflict resolution skills, and maybe they don't even practice it the second time around. But eventually the kids are starting to handle more things on their own the right way, or going to seek the right people to make sure that they don't end up in a fight or something big or disrupting a classroom. So gradually things are getting better and better at the school, and I think RP gives a voice to those couple of kids who usually don't have one or have never had one before. They're used to get out, go away, don't be here, or whatever it is, and then they get suspended and go home to who knows what, and then they're just supposed to come back and be normal. It's not going to happen that way. So this allows them to learn the skills, to understand that they matter, and what they do here matters, so that they can have a better future and a better present as well.
By allowing children to have ownership in the management of the classroom, for lack of a better term, it actually empowers them to take responsibility. It empowers them to have ownership in the room. It empowers them to say that I am a member of this community. I am a member of this room. And actually, I think that in restorative rooms where we see this working well, you see children then that understand that their actions and their behaviors then do ripple effect on other people, and they get that because they have ownership, because they have responsibility, and they recognize that, and it's not just someone constantly doing for them.
The closeness that happens in my restorative circles, bring out, a deeper feeling, with persons, to where they have to actually, number one, face themselves. And number two, face the person that they injured. That in itself is extremely difficult for people to sit down and say that I'm wrong, you know, and the second thing, to say that, oh, I wronged you. So we deal with the feeling part more so in my restorative circles here in the room that creates an atmosphere of calm and tension release.
If I do something and I get upset about it, I usually talk to the teacher about it because, like, it's just a better way to understand why you got in trouble than just like, oh, he got in trouble, so.
I think adding restorative practices to what we do, like you were saying, it's not just for the students, it's also for us. We benefit from it because the goal is it's going to change our daily interactions with our students. The students benefit from it because there doesn't have to be the fear that for the least infraction, I'm going to get suspended, I'm going to get a detention. Even on the times where a student does require, you know, some severe discipline, if you've built a relationship with that student and you've built a relationship with that parent, that conversation and that action goes so much better. Because by then the parent knows, you know what, you have really tried to work with me, you've tried to work with my child.
I think RP, it's not being easy on the kids, it's being fair, and it's creating a mutual respect based on understanding.
I think it's not about discipline. It's about the community. It's the whole. And that's what this is about. If you're talking about schools and you're talking about restorative justice, you're talking about living in relationships as a whole community. And you can't forget the sight of that.
Pause jars. So when kids are frustrated, you just shake it up, watch the little sparkles flow, and it's like a tool to calm down.
This isn't because we think that punitive systems are better than non-punitive systems. We know that that's a fallacy. Like if we look at the research, what's perpetuating the punitive systems is an ideology of, in order for people to change, they have to hurt. That has to change.
I am also just super excited that Delawareans have embraced restorative justice and gone on this effort and made it into legislation. Like, that is huge and amazing and wonderful, and I applaud them for that. And I'm super proud of Delaware for the efforts that you guys have done, and to see restorative practices as the #1 intervention in this report is super exciting, and I'm thrilled about that.
It's about community justice and community reform. The community can tell you what they need. They know what they need. No one wants to listen. So instead of trying to solve all these problems with all these other solutions, just listen to the people that are asking for the help. They'll tell you what they need. So invite them to the table. They'll show up and they have ideas, and create the conditions for people to have a say in the laws that dictate their lives. Because on a very small scale, that's what SODP showed me, that these kids and these parents, they knew what they needed. They wanted this help. They wanted this behavioral assistance. They wanted all of these resources. No one was listening to them. No one was giving it to them.
If we want our teachers and our educators to eliminate and reduce their use of exclusionary punishment, then we also need to offer guidance on what to do in place of that.
We're not here to say that SODP is the answer. No, SODP is part of the issue. That we are all part of the problem. You know, diversion programs are great, but they're band-aids in a system that needs just a complete overhaul. So while we can't or shouldn't ignore the programs, we need to be using what they teach and the resources that they can give and implement that at at an earlier stage.
Love does go a long way. And if you care about our children who are our future, we need to do something about it. It's got to change. When there's a will, there's a way.
Some of the kids that do manage to get in trouble that are actually really good just mess up on things here or there.
I'm a very good person. It's just I made an honest mistake and that I shouldn't have. But, you know, you learn.
I'm not a criminal and I'm not a negative person. I'm not all that. I am a human being and I am a little girl that needs to get her education at the end of the day.
I just feel like once you have like this type of program in high school, like it could just help people. Because it's not just for behavior, but I feel like it's like a life lesson class. You can learn more about yourself, learn more about the person you actually are, your feelings, like your actions, how you feel about yourself. And I just feel like that would help in high school because some people need that just to like boost them or regenerate them, to help them know that like they're not by themselves.
We want these children to have like fully equipped resources and skills to be able to function in society. But we also need to be challenging the society that they are trying to fit into because it's not always right.
You're broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Move mountains, we gon' walk it out and move mountains. And I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, I like the waves. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. That we have each other, and for that we have each other.